Good afternoon, everyone. In our last session, we looked at the first half of Canto 13 of Book 2. It's called In the Self of Mind. And it's interesting that this canto falls almost exactly into two halves. We looked last time at the first half. Now I'll take up from there and go on to the end of the canto. Our mind is a house haunted by the slain past. Ideas soon mummified, ghosts of old truths, God's spontaneities tied with formal strings and packed into drawers of reason's trim bureau, a grave of great lost opportunities. Or an office for misuse of soul and life, and all the waste man makes of heaven's gifts, and all his squanderings of nature's store, a stage for the comedy of ignorance. In the first part of this canto, it was as if King Aswapati felt that he's found the goal, that he's reached a place where he can stay, where his soul can stay. But then suddenly, into that feeling of peace and satisfaction and certitude, it's as if a ray of light points to him and shows him that nothing could be known. That must be reached from which all knowledge comes. And so that ray of light seems to cast doubt on everything that seems, on all the appearances of this world. That ray of light it struck a strong blow at the very roots of thought and sense. I'm reading now at the bottom of page 284. Would you like to read, Dana? Smote at the very roots of thought and sense. Next line. In a universe of nescience.
In a universe of nescience, they have grown, aspiring towards a superconscient sun, playing with shine and rain from heavenlier skies. They never can win, however high they reach, or o'erpass, however keen they pull. Yet doubt corroded even the means to think. Distrust was thrown upon mind's instruments. All that it takes for reality's shining coin, proved fact, fixed inference, reduction theory, whole theory, assured significance, appeared as frauds upon time's credit plan, or assets valueless in truth's treasure.
Thank you. So this they is thought and sense. These are our tools to think. And if these things are challenged, then one gets overtaken by doubt. The poet tells us that thought and sense, these tools of mind, have developed, have grown in a universe where knowledge doesn't work really. A universe of nescience, of not knowing. But thought and sense, these tools of ours, are aspiring towards a much higher kind of knowledge, a superconscient sun, a sun of truth. So they are playing thought and sense here. Our thoughts, our senses are playing sometimes in sunshine, sometimes in rain. That's coming from heavenlier skies, not our material sky. Heavenlier skies that our thought and our senses can never win, however high they reach. They can never overpass, they can never go beyond those skies. Whatever sharp tools, strong tools they are using. So for Asparpati, this causes a severe state of uncertainty. A doubt corroded even the means to think. The thought that he's having seems valueless. Distrust was thrown upon mind's instruments. It seems impossible to know anything really, because everything that the mind relies on as shining coin of reality, something that has a true value, and the poet gives some examples of what those things are that we rely on. We rely on proved fact. If the scientists tell us something, that it is like this, we tend to trust them. Fixed inference. Inference is an operation of mind which takes certain evidence and comes to certain conclusions. And if then it's reached those conclusions, it relies on them. A similar process is deduction. And that's what Sherlock Holmes used to do. No, he would take certain little bits of very tiny bits of evidence and reach surprising conclusions. Deduction, clear. From one thing we deduce another. Then we establish firm theories. We are sure about certain significances, which are more important and others not. But now, because of this ray of higher consciousness that has come, it has cast doubt on all these things, so that all these things that normally we rely on, and that Asparpati would rely on, suddenly appear like frauds, tricks played. Frauds upon time's credit bank, as if there's a bank of knowledge there, and now suddenly it's been stolen or removed. Or everything that we know, everything that he knows, seems valueless. Assets that might have had a value once, but now are valueless in truth's treasury, in that safe place where truth keeps true knowledge. So then we continue with another image. Kamala, would you read? An ignorance, yeah?
And ignorance on an uneasy throne. Travis died with a fortuitous serenity, a figure of knowledge carved into his words, and tinsel thought forms rightly inadequate, a laborer in the dark dazzled by our light. What it knew was an image in a broken glass. What it was real, but inside untrue. All the ideas in its very repertory were like the mutterings of a transient cloud that spent itself in a sound and left no trace.
Thank you. So instead of the rule of truth and true knowledge, what he sees is an ignorance, a state of not knowing, seated like a king, but on an uneasy throne. And it's making a mockery, to travesty something. It's to make a mockery or a caricature of it, with a fortuitous sovereignty, a rule that has come about only by chance. It has no other significance. Still, there seems to be something like a figure of knowledge, but it's all dressed up in doubtful words, dressed up almost like a Christmas tree in tinsel thought forms. Tinsel is the silver and gold sparkles that we put on a Christmas tree. Tinsel thought forms. They look shiny and attractive, but they are brightly inadequate. They're useless. That figure of knowledge was a laborer in the dark, dazzled by half-light. The light comes and you can't see because it's shining in your eyes. You're dazzled. What it knew was just an image, a reflection in a broken mirror. If the mirror is broken or distorted, what you see there is misleading. That figure of knowledge could see certain things. What it saw was real, but the way that it's seeing it is wrong, is untrue and misleading. So all the ideas that are there in the vast repertory, the storehouse of cosmic mind, they're just like mutterings of a transient cloud that spent itself in sound and left no trace. Like a summer cloud that comes and overshadows us, and we think that it's going to bring rain. All it does is make a few rumblings, and then off it goes. It hasn't brought us anything. Joel, you'd like to read?
A frail house hanging in uncertain air, the thin ingenious web round which it moves, put out a while on the tree of the universe, and gathered up into itself again, was only a trap to catch life's insect food, winged thoughts that flutter fragile in brief light, but they, once captured, in fixed forms of mind, aims puny but looming large in man's small scale, flickers of imagination's brilliant goals, and cobweb-wrapped beliefs alive no more.
Thank you. So the image is of a spider's web. It's a frail house, can be easily spoiled and broken. A frail house hanging in uncertain air. There are different kinds of cobwebs. No? Sometimes the spider spins from one twig to another twig so that insects flying in that direction will get caught in the net. But sometimes, I see it here at certain times of the year, groups of social spiders, they build themselves a whole kind of tent. But it's still a frail house, hanging in uncertain air. It's thin, it's ingenious, it's extremely skillful and carefully made. It's put out just for a time on the tree, in this case the tree of the universe. And then what the spider does after some time, it gathers all that silk back into itself, gathered up into itself again. But as long as it's there and it's functioning, it's only a trap to catch life's insect food. Winged thoughts that are fluttering, fragile in brief light. But they are dead once they've been captured and caught in that, wrapped up in that web, and they've been given fixed forms of mind. The mind also has aims or forms aims for itself, but they are puny aims. They don't have much strength. But still, to our mind, they may loom very large and seem very important. Because of our small scale. So these aims are like flickers, a flickering light like a candle in the wind, flickers of imagination's brilliant gauze. We can imagine all kinds of beautiful things, no? But they're also cobweb-wrapped beliefs, alive no more. Things that we were sure of once, but they get caught up into the cobweb of the mind, and then they're wrapped up and their life goes out of them. Margaret, will you read?
A magic hunt of built-up certitudes, made out of glittering dust and bright moonshine, in which it shrines its image of the real, collapsed into the nescience whence it rose. Only a gleam was there of simple facts that shower the mystery lurking in their glow, and falsehoods based on hidden realities by which they live until their fall from time.
Anybody would like to ask anything about this passage? The mind builds itself a magic hut of things that it has decided are sure and reliable, certitudes, things that it's certain about. But now, Asvapati realizes that all the things he was certain and sure about, it's just made of glittering dust and bright moonshine. And that's only covering an image of what is real. And then for him everything collapses. It's no longer at all convincing. It collapses into the nescience from which it emerged. What is left? Only a gleam, a faint light coming from symbol facts. Symbol facts, they do seem to have some kind of reality. They shroud, they wrap in mystery, or they wrap in cobwebs the mystery lurking in their glow. Symbol facts and falsehoods. Falsehoods that are based on hidden realities. And those hidden realities give them some right to live for a while until they fall from time. It's no longer their time to exist.
Shraddhavan. So we can call it like supra-physical, because the mind is, of course, not physical, and it just floats in the air. Like
It's a
right
magic
now we are
hut,
thinking
yes.
of something, no?
Yes, we are thinking of something. And what is the basis for our thought? And what is the basis for our understanding?
He's describing that nothing could be known, how this process is.
That's suddenly the experience that has come to him, that all these things that we normally think that we know and we can rely on, they're useful to us. He suddenly realized, where is that knowledge coming from? What's it based on? What use is it? Nothing can be known. That must be reached, from which all knowledge comes. And how is he going to reach that? Meanwhile, everything that he experiences in the world has this sense of unreality. Alexander, our mind is a house.
Our mind is a house haunted by the slain past. Ideas soon mummify, ghosts of old truths. God's spontaneities tied with fallen strings and packed into drawers of reason's trim bureau. A grave of great lost opportunities, or an artist for misuse of soul and life, and all the waste man makes of heaven's gifts, and all his wanderings of nature's store, a stage for the comedy of ignorance.
So just imagine if you have this experience, what kind of bewildered state it leaves you in. That bewildered state is described in the next lines, Zek. The world seemed. Will you read?
The world seemed a long aeonic failure scene. All sterile grew. No base was left secure. Assailed by the edge of the convicting beam, the builder, reason, lost her confidence. In the successful sleight and turn of thought that makes the soul the prisoner of a phrase. Its highest wisdom was a brilliant guess. Its mighty structured science of the worlds, a passing light on being's surfaces. There was nothing there but a schema drawn by sense, a substitute for eternal mysteries, a scroll figure of reality, a plan and elevation by the architect word, imposed upon the semblances of time.
Thank you. Any words anybody would like to ask about?
That stage for the comedy of ignorance is really like,
Yes.
it hits us. Because we take things too seriously at times.
But this feeling that the world, the whole world, it's a long, aeonic failures scene. That there's nothing meaningful, all this vast labor of the suns. What has it come to? There's this feeling of sterility, of worthlessness, and no basis, nothing to rely on. Because we rely, one of the tools we rely on, apart from our physical experience, our touch and our sense, is our reason. But even this builder reason, reasoning from one certitude to the next, lost her confidence in the mind, in the successful sleight and turn of thought. Sleight of hand, it's what magicians do, tricks. But this is a sleight and turn of thought that convinces us that this or that can be relied on. But it's just making the soul the prisoner of a phrase. The highest wisdom that reason can provide is just a brilliant guess. And the mighty structured science of the worlds that it builds up, just a passing light on the surfaces of existence. There's nothing real there, nothing but this kind of diagram, this schema drawn by the senses, which is a substitute for eternal mysteries. For eternal mysteries, what is really there is mystery. But this schema drawn by the senses is just a very rough draft, a scroll figure of reality. A plan and an elevation, these things have been invented by the word, by words that we use, that are imposed on, pasted onto the appearances of time. So he reaches this state where existence, self, was shadowed by a doubt. Does anything really exist? Do I exist? No. Existence, self, was shadowed by a doubt. Almost, it seemed, a lotus leaf afloat on a nude pool of cosmic nothingness. This is, I think, one of the traditional images, no, for this state of wondering about existence. Dana, you'll go on.
This great spectator and creator mind was holding some half-seeing's delicate, a veil that hung between the soul and light, an idol, not the living body of God. Even the still spirit that looks upon its works was some pale friend of the unknowable. A shadow seemed the void and witness self, its liberation and immobile calm, the void recoil of being from time-made things, not the self-vision of eternity. Deep peace was there, but not the nameless force. Our sweet and mighty mother was not there, who gathers to her bosom children's lives, her class that takes the world into her arms in the fathomless rapture of the infinite. The bliss that is creation's splendid grind, or the wide passion of God ecstasy that locks in the blaze of the boundless heart of love.
Thank you. This great spectator, this observer and creator mind, it's something we value so much, rely on without even knowing it. But now for Asvapati, he experiences, he feels that even this observer and creator mind is only delegated, it's been sent to represent something else. And that something is only a half-seeing, it's not a real knowledge. It's only a veil that's hanging between the soul and true light. An idol, an image, an idol is a sacred image, and we can value it very much, but we would value even more the living body of God. So even that still, silent spirit, that the witness self that looks upon its works, for Asvapati now it seems some pale front, an outer appearance of the unknowable. A shadow seemed the wide and witness self, the Purusha. That liberation and immobile calm which it gives seems to be just an empty recoil, stepping back of being, of existence, from time-made things, as if it's abandoning this universe of time and space and individuality. He can't see it anymore as the self-vision of eternity. He does feel some deep peace. That was the first realization. The self, the silence one, here can stay. No? But it's not enough. Asvapati is not satisfied with the deep peace. He's looking also for the nameless force of the mother, and that's missing. Our sweet and mighty mother was not there, who gathers to her bosom her children's lives, her clasp that takes the world into her arms in the fathomless rapture of the infinite. The smile that says yes to everything. The bliss that is creation's splendid grain, the way in which the universe lives. Or the white passion of God, ecstasy that laughs in the blaze of the boundless heart of love. He's missing all these things because of that skeptic ray that has disturbed his sense of certainty of what can be relied on. Kamala, you'll read.
Creator spirit, then the self of mind must answer to the questioning of his soul. For here was no firm rule and no sure road. I climbing pathways seized in the unknown, and I decide constructed beyond. In contemporary patterns and conflicts, apart experience, fragmented the whole.
Thank you. So this is an important turning point. A greater spirit than the self of mind must answer to the questioning of his soul. And Asvapati acknowledges this because he understands that here there's no firm clue, no guide, nothing he can rely on, no sure road. There seem to be some pathways leading upwards, but they lead to something unknown. It's as if the vision of some artist has constructed a beyond, a heaven, but it's constructed it in contrary patterns and conflicting hues. They are contradicting each other. So he realizes this is a part experience which makes the whole, the oneness, seem to be fragmented, broken up. Joel.
He looked above, but all was blank and still. A sapphire firmament of abstract thought escaped into a formless vacancy. He looked below, but all was dark and mute. A noise was heard between of thought and prayer, a strife, a labor without end or pause. A vain and ignorant seeking raised its voice. A rumor and a movement and a call. A foaming mass, a cry innumerable, rolled ever upon the ocean surge of life, along the coasts of mortal ignorance.
Thank you. So he found no firm clue and no sure road, so he looks upwards. But there too, no clue. Everything was blank and still. But there seems to be a sapphire firmament. Sapphire is a very beautiful color. When the sky is sapphire blue, we can really delight in that. And a firmament is something fixed. At the beginning of the Bible, we hear that the Lord divided everything into two firmaments, the upper and the lower. So this upper firmament, it may have a beautiful blue color, but it's still a firmament of abstract thought. It doesn't seem to be a tangible reality. And it's just escaping from the vision, from the perception, into a formless vacancy, an emptiness. That's if he looks upwards. If he looks below, everything is dark and mute, unconscious, silent. And between the sapphire firmament and the darkness below, he's aware of a noise of thought and prayer, a strife, a labor without end or pause, a vain and ignorant seeking raised its voice. It's the voice of the world, of our seeking. He hears this rumor, this sound of movement, and this call. It's like the waves of an ocean, the foaming waves of an ocean, a foaming mass, and a cry innumerable. So many different voices are rolling forever upon the ocean surge of life, the ocean of life, which is surging there along the coasts of mortal ignorance. Margaret.
On its unstable and enormous breast, beams and forces, forms and youth, like waves, jostled for figure and supremacy, and rose and sang, and rose again in time. And at the bottom of the sleepless stir, a nothingness, parent of the struggling worlds, a huge creator death, a mystic void, forever sustaining the irrational cry, forever excluding the supernal word, motionless, refusing, question and response, reposed beneath the voices and the nods, the dim conscience done in certitude. Two firmaments of darkness and of light opposed their limits to the Spirit's law. It moved, veiled in from self's infinity, in a world of beings and momentary events, where all must die to live and live to die. Immortal, parallel mortality, it wandered in the spiral of its acts, or ran around the cycles of its thought, yet was no more than its original self, and knew no more than when it first began. To be was a prison, extinction the escape.
Thank you. So these last lines from the middle of page 287 seem to be describing the world as Asvapati sees it in that state. This noise of thought and prayer, of struggle and labor, without end or pause. It just goes on and on and on. But this is the voice of a vain and ignorant seeking. The seeking doesn't achieve anything. A rumour and a movement and a call. There's this foaming mass which is also crying out. It's an immeasurable cry in search of something, rolling forever upon this ocean surge of life along the coasts of mortal ignorance. And on the breast of that ocean surge, beings and forces, forms, ideas, like waves, they're jostling for figure and supremacy, competing with each other. And they rise and they sink and they rise again. And he becomes aware that at the bottom of this ocean, at the bottom of this sleepless stir, there's a nothingness. A nothingness which is the parent, which has given rise to all these struggling worlds. A huge creator death, a mystic void and emptiness. That's what forever sustaining, supporting this irrational cry. And it's forever excluding the supernal word, the true word of creation. That huge creator death, that mystic emptiness is motionless. It doesn't move. It refuses question and response. That's what's lying underneath the voices and the march. It is the dim, inconscience, dumb incertitude. Incertitude is like doubt, permanent doubt. Nothing is certain. So at this point, having passed through this canto, the self of mind, the wonderful experience at the beginning, which seemed to be the solution to everything, and then the gradual realization that it isn't a solution at all. At the end of this canto, he sees these two firmaments, one of darkness below and one of light above. They are the limits between which the spirit can move. That dim inconscient moves veiled in, hidden from the infinity of the true self. In a world of beings, our world of beings and momentary events, where everything must die to live and lives to die. This world is immortal by ever-renewed mortality, an endless process of death and rebirth. And it's wandering. It doesn't even know exactly where it's going. In a spiral perhaps sometimes going up and sometimes going down, the spiral of its acts. Or it moves in cycles, repetitive cycles, where certain movements are repeated again and again, the cycles of its thought. And after all that movement, It was no more than its original self, just as it was at the very beginning. And it doesn't know anything more than when it first began. So this experience leaves Asvapati feeling that just existence itself was a prison from which the only escape would be extinction of himself. That he would have to become extinct in order to escape from this endless round. Fortunately, that's not the case. At the beginning of the next canto, a covered answer to his seeking came. There's a beautiful secret invitation which solves all his difficulties. Such a beautiful canto, the next one.
So that sounds really like nirvana.
This
Yes,
to be was a prison, and extinction's the only escape. Yeah.
The
Naturally,
ascetic
then
one.
you want to go for nirvana, for
Yes.
nothingness.
Mm.
No? But that's not the way out that
Yes.
has been prepared for King Asvapati. Something much, much better. One of the most beautiful cantos in the whole book. Shall we stop there for today? Thanks to Sri Aurobindo. Our mind is a house haunted by the slain past. Ideas soon mummified, ghosts of old truths. God's spontaneities tied with formal strings and packed into drawers of reason's trim bureau. A grave of great lost opportunities, or an office for misuse of soul and life, and all the waste man makes of heaven's gifts, and all his squanderings of nature's store. A stage for the comedy of ignorance. The world seemed a long, aeonic failure's scene. All sterile grew, no base was left secure. Assailed by the edge of the convicting beam, the builder reason lost her confidence in the successful sleight and turn of thought that makes the soul the prisoner of a phrase. Its highest wisdom was a brilliant guess. Its mighty structured science of the worlds, a passing light on being's surfaces. There was nothing there but a schema drawn by sense, a substitute for eternal mysteries, a scrawl figure of reality, a plan and elevation by the architect word imposed upon the semblances of time. Existence self was shadowed by a doubt. Almost it seemed a lotus leaf afloat on a nude pool of cosmic nothingness. This great spectator and creator mind was only some half-seeing's delegate, a veil that hung between the soul and light, an idol, not the living body of God. Even the still spirit that looks upon its works was some pale front of the unknowable. A shadow seemed the wide and witness self, its liberation and immobile calm, a void recoil of being from time-made things, not the self-vision of eternity. Deep peace was there, but not the nameless force. Our sweet and mighty Mother was not there, who gathers to her bosom her children's lives, her clasp that takes the world into her arms in the fathomless rapture of the infinite, the bliss that is creation's splendid grain, or the white passion of God ecstasy that laughs in the blaze of the boundless heart of love. A greater spirit than the self of mind must answer to the questioning of his soul. For here was no firm clue and no sure road. High climbing pathways ceased in the unknown. An artist's sight constructed the beyond in contrary patterns and conflicting hues. A part experience fragmented the whole. He looked above, but all was blank and still. A sapphire firmament of abstract thought escaped into a formless vacancy. He looked below, but all was dark and mute. A noise was heard between of thought and prayer, a strife, a labour without end or pause. A vain and ignorant seeking raised its voice. A rumour and a movement and a call, a foaming mass, a cry innumerable, rolled ever upon the ocean surge of life along the coasts of mortal ignorance. On its unstable and enormous breast, beings and forces, forms, ideas, like waves, jostled for figure and supremacy, and rose and sank and rose again in time. And at the bottom of the sleepless stir, a nothingness, parent of the struggling worlds, a huge creator death, a mystic void forever sustaining the irrational cry, forever excluding the supernal word, motionless, refusing question and response, reposed beneath the voices and the march, the dim inconscience, dumb incertitude. Two firmaments of darkness and of light opposed their limits to the Spirit's walk. It moved veiled in from self's infinity, in a world of beings and momentary events, where all must die to live and live to die. Immortal by renewed mortality, it wandered in the spiral of its acts, or ran around the cycles of its thought, yet was no more than its original self, and knew no more than when it first began. To be was a prison, extinction the escape.